Right. All right, well, welcome. Thank you for joining us. We are with College Depot. College Depot is a free college access center through the Phoenix Public Library. We're located at the Bird and Bar Library in downtown Phoenix. My name is Alexis, and I'm here with my coworker Cooper. We're presenting on writing a resume today. So let's get started. If you have any questions at any time, I know that our presentation formatting is a little unique, a little different. I know some of your teachers will be playing this on the screen in class, but if you have any questions, feel free to unmute yourself or ask questions in the chat, and we'll keep an eye out for those. And I will be stopping periodically just to double check and make sure everything's okay and see if anybody has any questions. All right, so getting started. Your resume should introduce you to prospective employers, scholarship application committees, or college admission officers. Your resume is a great way to list your accomplishments and career and academic highlights. When somebody's trying to get a better picture of you, when you show them your resume, it should be simple and easy to read and just list some of the key points about your accomplishments. It's a great way to impress prospective employers and can be an interview on paper. It's a great way to jumpstart the interview process as well. People can reference back to your resume and ask questions based off of the information that you provide on your resume. It should also demonstrate your communication and organizational skills. Based off of your resume, prospective employers or these committees or officers will get a better idea of who you are as a person, even though I know that that's hard to accomplish in just one piece of paper. And so that's why we're going to be talking about some tips and tricks to getting a better idea of how to format your resume. All right, so formatting. Your resume should hopefully be at least or around 1 page at most. It should be concise and to the point. Some people will do 1 page front and back, but really we are going to try to condense that information into 1 page. Your formatting for your resume should include a readable font, hopefully nothing bigger than 12-point font, usually around 10 to 12 is a good range, and using a legible font such as Times New Roman, something familiar and nothing too crazy. You don't want to get too crazy with the font. You want to keep it pretty simple. A simple, clean, and organized layout. I know it's tempting to want to have a unique layout for your resume, try to do something different, but I can promise you that whoever's looking at your resume is probably seen some of those already and is probably just looking for a great way to a good summary of your accomplishments. So try to be consistent with formatting choices, use bullet points to keep information clear and organized, use bold, italics, and underlining to help with readability and flow. So we have a great example of a resume that we've received here at College Depot from an intern that was with us. This is Bianca's resume. As you can see, she lists her education, experience, and community involvement. So she has these nice big headers up at the top of each section, and then all of the following information is indented and also is in bold. All of the main points are in bold. So this is a great way to format your resume and to list all your accomplishments in a way that's very readable. So you can see all the places where Bianca has studied. We can see that she studied here in Arizona as well as in Chile. All of her experience has been listed and all of her titles are in bold, which is a great thing to include are your job titles, but we'll get into that a little more. So let's keep going. All right, tips for getting started. So first you want to create an outline. Maybe just write a list of things that you would like to include in your resume, things that just come to you as you're thinking of experiences, and just add to that list before starting to write your resume. Things to include in the outline can be experiences such as school, activities or clubs, athletics, community service, or any jobs. So anything that's relevant to you as a student. I know that jobs may not make up a large part of your experiences, but you can definitely include school accomplishments, any awards that you've won, any clubs that you participate in, any athletic experience that you have. Those are great things to include on your resume. Any volunteering experience that you have, all great things to include under experiences. Next, you want to include skills. So what kind of skills have you developed in these experiences? So skills can, we'll talk a little bit more about in this presentation, but they can include technology and social media. Skills can be anything that you'd like them to be. So just highlighting things that you're passionate about and things that you've learned in your studies.
What is your name? Fill out all of it. And that's
Also like to include that you seek help or advice when you're working on your resume. So ask your parents, ask your teachers, ask counselors, anybody that has experience writing resumes to take a look at your outline, take a look at your resume as you're writing it. They can add in some more skills that you should include. They can take a look at things that you need to cut down on. They can look at aesthetics for you. So things that you aren't sure about, just get a second opinion on. And usually people have experience writing resumes. Most people have to, everybody has to write a resume. And so asking people who have more experience with that is a great way to get started. All right, things to include in your high school resume. Some things to include: contact information, education, work experience, community involvement, any leadership roles, any skills, or any awards and honors. So things that have been relevant to your life. So things that you've put a lot of hard work into, those are all things that you should be listing in your resume, because there are things that you're proud of and things that you can talk about with people who are interviewing you. So as we can see in the image, some other things that you can include: volunteer work, any extracurricular activities, academics, any athletic pursuits, any achievements, and any informal work experience. So even things like babysitting, those experiences have given you skills that you can apply on your resume and that you can apply to future job work or even, academic pursuits. It shows that you are able to work independently, that you are able to manage, multitask in a situation, manage a lot of responsibility. And so these are all things, even if it seems like something that is not worth mentioning, I would definitely urge you to try fitting it in your resume, especially just as you're getting started writing resumes. Things that you can include might not fit the traditional resume that you're used to seeing. And so don't get nervous if you don't have a lot of job experience. That's not all of that you can include in your resume. You can definitely include some other information. All right, so the first part of your resume at the very top is going to be your contact information. This will be your header. So this will include your name, your phone number, your professional email address. So if you don't have a professional email address, feel free to make one. We would encourage you to make one. It's a great way to keep track of all your applications as well. That way you know that this specific email address is specifically for any applications that you're applying to. Any professional inquiries are going to that email address and not to the one that you made when you were in middle school. So it's just a great tip to have multiple email addresses. And then that way it looks a little more professional on your resume as well. Usually whoever you're in contact with will have your phone number, your name and email address, but these are all great things to have in your header, just in case. You also will want to include your city and state. That's just extra information. Some places recommend including your whole address, but keeping it pretty concise and easy to read is important. You can include more information throughout your resume, and you don't necessarily need to have your full address in the header. Does anybody have any questions? I'm sorry. I know I'm going through this a little quickly, but if anybody has any questions.
I think so far the chat's been pretty quiet, Alexis, but I'll keep an eye on it.
All right, thank you, Cooper. The next part to include in your resume can be, this is an optional part, but it can be any professional objective or summary. So any thing that you'd like to highlight, you can include just in a little blurb at the top of your resume. This is optional. You sometimes see this in resumes. You don't really need to include this part. It's more words. If you have more information to fill out the rest of your resume, I would recommend doing that instead. But this, little short summary can provide clarity on your experiences and goals. It can also introduce a professional title that you are working towards and the amount of experience or time that you have in that field. It's a great way to connect your educational goals with your professional ones. It offers relevant keywords for the reader, and it quantifies and contextualizes the remaining information in your resume. So it's just a great summary that you can include just at the top of your resume. If you're able to do that, that's great. If you'd like to do that, but as I said earlier, this is optional. And if you would rather fill out the rest of your resume instead, I feel like that's a great use of that space as well, because you will notice that when you're making a resume that it tends to fill up pretty quickly and it feels like you have enough information for 2 pages. But as we said earlier, you're going to want to try to keep that information concise and keep it to 1 page. So that can be a little tricky if you are including extra information. All right. And then next, you're going to include your education. So here's where you'll have your school name and location, your degree earned, so your high school diploma, an associate's degree, maybe if you have one, a degree that you're working towards. So if you're in school, if you're going into school for something, or if you're starting school in something, that's something that you can include on your resume. The year that you plan to graduate is very important. So if you're in school currently, you can put that you will be graduating in a future day at a future date, and that would be something to include. You include the highest level of academic achievement. So once you start college, that'll be what you'll include. You don't need to include high school. You can include your GPA. Usually it's recommended that you include that if it's over 3.5. Also, you can include any advanced courses or any honors or awards that you've gotten in school. So if you've graduated at a certain rank, you can include that as well. And that is what you'll include in the education section. All right, Cooper, I believe you are up next. So Cooper will be taking it from here.
Thank you so much, Alexis. And yeah, while we switch over, if anyone has any questions at this point, kind of a nice midway point, feel free to type them in the chat, or if you'd like to unmute yourself and ask, we'd be happy to address any questions so far.
All right. Cooper, are you able to take over the presentation? I can't see my cursor for some reason.
I will attempt to, Alexis, and then I guess we'll see. I think hopefully that went over. Are you able to see my screen now?
I can't get out of my tab, so give me just a second. But if anybody else can see the screen, please let us know. Okay.
Amy, are you able to see that okay?
I see a screen. I'm just not sure whose it is. I see experience, and it says down in the bottom that it's Cooper's. So I'm thinking we might be okay.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. Still have the technology kinks every once in a while. So moving on then, we are talking about experience now. So putting different types of, especially work experience on your resume. As Alexis mentioned though, this doesn't necessarily need to be super formal. If you don't have a lot of work experience yet, that's totally okay. We'll talk about some different ways to incorporate that work as well. But if you do have work experience, if you work for a company or held jobs or internships, This is a great place to put in some details about them. And you can see an example on the right. So some details to include for work experience: the company name or the organization name, your specific job title, the dates of employment, and then a summary of duties. And this kind of goes back to what Alexis was getting at, and kind of a theme for the whole presentation today is finding a balance between specificity and details, but also not overwhelming the reader with too much information. So it's great to include, again, specific things that you worked on, that you were responsible for, but at the same time, you might want to try to avoid writing a whole paragraph, just to make it a little bit more readable. You can see in the example, we recommend having bullet points to organize your thoughts, and make it just a little bit more legible, easy to garner for the reader. Again, if you don't have a lot of formal work experience, that's totally okay. You can maybe try renaming this section either practical experience or academic experience, and this could include a range of different things. Alexis mentioned, for example, babysitting. That might be an informal job, not necessarily working for a company, but you're obviously in charge of things, you're multitasking, you're working for people. So that's a great example of something to put on your resume. It could also include roles in extracurricular activities. So for example, if you were a president or a secretary of one of your school's clubs, that would be fantastic to put here. And same idea where you provide a summary of the details of your role. It could also include volunteer or community service. And that actually leads into our next section. But same kind of basic idea with all of these different approaches, providing details on the organization or the company or the school, and then summarizing your specific role concisely and specifically. So I mentioned volunteer and community service. That is wonderful, wonderful experiences to put onto your resume. So things to include in this category might include volunteer work, community service, and actually very similar to what we were just discussing, putting the community or organization name and then your specific role or job, the dates, length of experience, and then again, a brief summary of the duties or work that you did. This section could also include leadership roles, especially, again, if you're a leader in your community. That's a fantastic thing to talk about there. Student government. We talked about school clubs, organizations, especially if you have a leadership role in those organizations. Athletics, and again, kind of showcasing your role and maybe how you've grown in athletics over time. And yeah, again, just kind of reaching out to the community, being involved, anything in that sphere would be great to include here. And finding, again, that balance between specific details, but then not overloading the reader with too much information. So next section we wanted to talk about are skills. And this is something that, especially moving forward, this is something that you can really tailor to what you are applying for. So if you're applying, for example, for a tech job or something in the tech industry, you'd really like to highlight your tech skills, your familiarity with Microsoft Office, for example. If you're applying for a marketing position, you might want to really focus on your social media skills. If you're applying for an arts program, you might want to talk about your artistic skills and your training in art. So really making this specific to what you're applying for. And essentially you can break the skills section down into hard skills and soft skills. So hard skills are going to be skills that demonstrate your knowledge or your ability with certain technology, again, for example, or your training, that kind of thing. Skills that employers might want or look for in a job description. So Again, for example, if you're focusing on kind of technology, you could, if you're familiar with Microsoft Office, if you're focusing on marketing or digital media, you can focus on social media. All those kind of things would go into the hard skills category. Alternatively, soft skills are going to be related to interacting with other people and or yourself. So this is where you can kind of talk about if you are a kind of leader, if you have a lot of leadership roles, if you're self-motivated, maybe you're really creative, maybe you're really good at multitasking, maybe you're very detail-oriented. Things that you know about yourself that help you, again, interact with other people, that help you interact with your role, with your duties. All of those skills would fall into soft skills and would be great to include in this section of your resume. So when thinking about skills, it's also important to kind of figure out a good way to present them and organize them. Because kind of just seeing a large list of hard skills or a large list of soft skills would be a little overwhelming. So some tips we have for narrowing them down or organizing them is kind of including keywords or phrases used elsewhere in the resume. So this kind of goes back to the idea of making these skills specific to what you're applying for. Again, if you're applying to a specific program at college, maybe you're applying to a business degree, and you want to kind of focus on your business skills. Actually, the example on the right might be a great example of how you could break that down. Marketing, customer service, content strategy. So making different sections and then providing specific examples of you using those skills would be a great idea. Alternatively, again, if you're applying to a program, maybe that's focused on art or photography, we have that photo in the top right. You might want to make different sections based on your artistic experiences or your artistic skills, your training, and talk about specific examples of things you've worked on or things that you've developed over time. So kind of organizing things into different sections is great, and then providing specific examples of how you use those skills can really be helpful for someone reading your resume. So then we reach another section, awards, honors, other. So this is kind of a great section, maybe towards the bottom of your resume, to kind of include different things that you've been, again, nominated for, that you've been awarded. Maybe if you have special training, anything like that would be great for this kind of a section. If you do have awards or honors, it's great to, again, include the name of the organization, the name of the award, the date awarded, and maybe a brief description of the award, especially if the title doesn't explain it too well. You could also include, again, different certifications. If you've had training or if you've taken specific courses that led to a certificate in something, especially if it's relevant to, again, what you're applying for, that would be great to include here. That could also include different coursework, if you've worked on kind of a thesis project at school, that kind of thing. And then going into the future, if you work or if you're a part of different conferences, if you present things, if you publish things moving forward, that would be great to include here as well, providing those specific details. Awesome. So then kind of taking a broader look, we wanted to show you a couple more examples of what a resume might look like and talk a little bit about them. So we have two examples here for us to kind of look at together. We have Stephen student on the left and then Zoe applicant on the right. You can see at the top, both of them have their contact information, and then they each have different sections. Stephen has qualifications, education, experience highlights. Zoe has kind of a beginning section where she talks about kind of the summary, her goal, and then education and credentials and professional experiences. So what I find really interesting when I look at these two together is I like some of the organizational choices. However, Stevens to me reads a little bit wordy. It seems a little dense, and that might be, what he's going for. It might be specific to what he's applying for. But I would recommend Stephen kind of try to make it a little bit more concise, and maybe a little bit friendlier to look at initially and read through. On the other hand, Zoe, I think she has it really well organized. I like the bullet points. I think those read really well. The different sections read really well. However, there's a bit of kind of extra spacing, especially at the top when she kind of does her summary. I think the summary is good. It's clear what she wants to do, and she's clear about her skills. But I think that could be maybe condensed a bit, just to make it a little bit more concise, and then maybe adding a few more things underneath it, I think could help this as well. This also kind of is an example of, we've kind of been talking about making it specific for what you're applying for. I think the best resumes that we've seen can tell a story about the person writing them. And so going down to, again, the way that you organize it, the different sections, the order that you put those in, can really tell a story about you. So Stephen really wants to focus on his qualifications up front, then he throws the education in, and then he talks about experience. Zoe up front talks about what she wants to do, her skills, and then talks about her education, and then talks about her professional experience as well. So the choices you make in kind of how your resume is formatted, how it's presented, can really help to tell a narrative about yourself to someone reading the resume. Cool. So then moving on, we wanted to just cover a couple of quick frequently asked questions that we get, particularly from high school students. So the first one is probably the most common. What if my resume is not long enough? What if I don't have a lot of experience? So we've touched on this in the presentation beforehand. This is something that comes up a lot. It's an extremely common concern. And we really recommend trying to think about your resume in terms of quality rather than quantity. So it goes back to, again, telling that story about yourself and about your experiences. So how can you take your experiences that you do have, that have impacted you, that you care about, and express them in this resume? Maybe, for example, you don't have a ton of different experiences, but maybe you've been a part of something for a long time. Maybe you've played a sport for almost your entire life. Maybe you've been involved in a community organization for a long time. How can you kind of include your growth in that area? Maybe you talk about what you started doing, your starting duties or responsibilities, and then talk about what you've eventually come to be in charge of or be responsible for. Alexis also mentioned you can also kind of look forward in your resume, and maybe this upcoming summer you have a internship lined up, and that's a great thing to put on your resume. And you can include expected dates to make it clear that it's something upcoming. But people reading resumes typically love to see that you have plans moving forward and that you have commitments moving forward. So that can really be help too. Another question we get a lot of is, how much specific information on my experiences should I include? Hopefully you picked up on kind of a running theme throughout the presentation of kind of finding that balance between specificity and then not throwing too much at the reader. So we really recommend, again, bullet points are great to kind of encourage you to be concise, and also to be very specific. You don't want to kind of dump a ton of words or a ton of information on the reader, but you want to be clear about what you've done and what you want to do. And remember that someone reading the resume can always ask further questions to follow up. So it's a great kind of rule of thumb to include something that's interesting, that grabs their attention, and if they want more information about it, they can ask you afterwards. The last question that we get a lot of is it okay to include things I did a long time ago? So we found typically that people reading resumes want to hear about your more recent experiences. So for example, things that you've done in high school, things that you're currently working on. However, including older experiences or older points can offer perspective on your journey and how you've grown. So we just talked about maybe you've been involved with something for a long time and your duties or responsibilities started one way and then transformed into something else. So that's an example of including something maybe from your past to show how you've grown in that area, how you've developed in that area. We found that people reading resumes really like to see how people have grown. So if you have examples like that, we think it's great to include that in your resume as well. Awesome. We also do want to take some time for your questions, but this is our contact information. As Alexis mentioned, we are located in downtown Phoenix at the Burton Barr Central Library. You can see our phone number there. There is a link to our website as well as our email address. And then you can also follow us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. But yeah, maybe we can take some time and see if anyone has any questions.
If you guys have any questions, you can post it in the chat, or I know we have 3 classrooms that joined us today. So teachers, if you have something on behalf of students, go ahead and post it. Otherwise, I know we're done with class in about 3 minutes. So if you're signing off, thank you for being here. If you have a question, we will still be around. And thank you both for being willing to record. So that way we will have access to this lesson at any time. So you will be commemorated in our little recording section on our notebook. So thank you.
Of course.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for having us.
And I could also send the presentation like last time as well, so you have access to the presentation too.
That would be awesome. Thank you. We love to keep all of that stuff together. It's the beauty, you know, it's the curse of having to do things virtual, but it's also the benefits. So we might as well store it and have all of that information for kids to access when they can.
Yeah. All right. Well, looks like there are no questions.